Good morning. We are live on StreamYard and we are live on all sorts of social media platforms and we are live on Clubhouse. And I am Mandy Jane and I'm just looking at the propensity of grey that is being run through my quite interesting hair this morning. I think we can see that the sage in me is emerging. I'm going to be talking this morning. I'm glad you're here, by the way. We're in Belonging in Business, and I am Mandy Jane, and you are who you are, wherever you are, whoever you are, wherever you are. We appear to have some people on social media. Please do just pop it in the chat. I'll be honest, I'm not sure whether I've connected all my chats yet. I would imagine eventually I will do. I certainly have a social media team now working with me, and they are starting to form. They're starting to gel. And I think eventually I might have some help with links and with things in the room and coordination and all those beautiful things like travel and making sure I've got a shower and being able to film it and then getting some footage from it, popping that on social media. Do you know, they've already started and they've only just got here. And this week, one of our inclusion posts, which is about the built environment, hit 12k. That's 12,000 people watched it. Interestingly, it was put out by our cameraman who has quite a lot of followers. So I think perhaps it was just a quarter of his users that went, oh, what's this? But that's great, right? And that's how social media works. It's not about you, it's about you and who follows you and then who follows them and who follows them and so on and so forth. So it's not something that I've really been interested in because I just, saw it as screaming into the void. What I see it now as is a way of getting out there the message that we need to get across, which is that, well, there's a purpose in all of this. And I'd like us to, good morning, Jew. I'd like us to examine it together because there's some really important things happening. One of which is I am about to go to the hospital again, but we'll go into that in a little while. The 4th, actually. May the 4th be with you, and that'll be Tuesday. I'm at the hospital. I'm there Monday night, the day before the NHS at my private appointment, clinic appointment, and I'm there Tuesday at my NHS appointment, which I'm taking the day off work. So next week, may the 4th be with me. May the 3rd also be with me. May the 5th also be with me, because the day before, the day after, and the day of, no doubt it will affect me. And I'm talking about an effect this morning. I'm talking about the Mandala effect. And I'm Mandy Jane. I'm a trainee social worker. I'm just a student. And while I'm being a student, I have been exploring the things that I've learned and I've been sharing them on social media and I've been learning them as I've been doing them. And I think that's powerful. And interestingly, this morning I found some really great material by a guy called Gabor, who I've been reading. I've read his book. I've bought his book, not a cheap book, I have to say, 30 odd quid, but or whatever it was. Not that I mind to pay for books because, books for me are knowledge, and knowledge is power, and power is shifting the power differential, which at the moment for me as a disabled person, I feel the power imbalance in this country is quite broad and deep. So I'm up for looking at that dynamic. And so I've been sharing it, but when I looked for Gabor's information, I was able to see a little introduction to give me a taster of what he might talk about. And then, bang, there was the lock and key. There it was. There was the lock and key. Because everybody's got to make a coin, right? Everybody's got to make a coin. The problem is for me with that is that actually, who owns information? It's not easy, is it? The Mandala effect is also really feeding into this because it links to theory and approaches to practice in social work that prevent there being barriers to the participation in social work. Now, I never would have imagined in a bazillion years, and I never exaggerate, as you can hear, that social work would require a model of practice to prevent barriers to social work. So we have a model of practice to engage practice educators. That's the people that teach me how to be in practice, how to be in practice with a student. These are the practice educator professional standards. These are the standards for delivery of training social workers. And it got created by a lady called Prospera Tedham. Now, Prospera Tedham is a visiting fellow at Anglican Ruskin University. And she began Diversity in Practice Learning, DIPL, for everyone that's to do with social work education. And her relationships and strengths-based practice gives us the Mandala model, or the Mandala cycle actually. And when I realized that this existed and I heard what that meant, and I listened to what she said, and I realized and connected the dots that this is a way of teaching the teachers that are teaching me, I really felt like I was on the right pathway, right? If ever you want the last 30 years confirming, this model confirmed it for me. That my values and my vision and my dreams were in alignment with those people who felt that the people in social work should be people who are supported to be in social work. I'm just going to say that. The people that are in social work should be supported to be in social work, because mainly the people in social work are a little bit crackers. Okay? When I say that, I mean it very kindly. I mean that the people that go to social work have usually had some challenges. That's my experience. That's my experience. Because why else would why would anybody choose to go and help lots of people in very difficult situations if they hadn't been driven to help people in very difficult situations? It's very likely that they are likely to be or have been in a very difficult situation. So if we have difficult situations, helping people in difficult situations, it might mean that as those people are learning, they might start to unpack or discover some of the reasons why they were moving towards helping people. And this is a cycle. It's not linearly. It's not a linear approach. It's not a straightforward road. In fact, it goes round and round. Good morning, Tran. You're welcome to join the club. Round and round. And the Mandela cycle says that the initial thing that needs to happen with every practice educator, which, remember, I'm a teacher. For those that don't know, I'm a teacher, so I'm already a SENDCO. I'm a specific educational needs coordinator. So I have a master's degree in learning difference. And I am interested in teaching as a result, but I'm also interested in learning and how I'm learning. And I'm going to go through the Mandela cycle, and I'm going to explain to you I think there's 10 or 6, 9 or something like that, aspects of it that when we are learning to be doing social work, and I say it deliberately that way, social work, not social work. I hope you can hear the subtle difference there. Social work, not social work. That the first thing as a practice educator, as the person to educate in practice, and I feel I do this all of my life. I don't think I need a practice educator's qualification to educate in practice, but I understand that it's important to understand how to do something. The first thing is to make time. Now that's interesting, when in the first 2 years of the social work degree, I've done more work than I've ever done for any degree. Honestly, any degree, and I've got a few. It's been the hardest degree I've ever done. It involves, um, oh, hang on a minute. I think we have the man himself. Bear with me. Yes. Where was I?
Talking about the difficulty of your degree.
Yeah, there we are. Thank you. There we go. I was just sent him a message. Thank you. Yeah. Make time. The time I've just made for Mandela to say, hey, talking about you. Make time. And this model has allowed me to reflect on the time that I made, in spite of the fact I can promise you that I was having a lot on at the time. So I'm going to just take you back a couple of years ago. Might be 3 now. I was on Clubhouse with a bloke called Pete Cohen, and in his room came somebody who was called Hussein. Now, Hussein had met a man called Mandela, and Mandela had a farm. Well, he didn't. He had 101 orphans that needed somewhere to live, and they were living on the floor, and they were feeding these orphans. And what I've learned about Uganda and other places like Uganda, and this is where the farm was and where Mandela comes from, is that very often people have such a low wage that children are sent to the orphanages to be fed and watered in that country, rather than be at home with their parents. So it's a life choice that has to be made because they can't be fed. So they're not always orphans. These orphans have parents, but they're orphaned from being parented because there is no money to feed them. So they're orphans by default. And these 101 orphans, whether or not they have children, parents, and many of them didn't, had gathered together because Mandela's dad had some land, some food, some ground, some farm, and they helped. And eventually, then they were able to sleep. And then they were sleeping for help. And then he had 101 of them because people joined where there's good news, right? So then we had to do something about that. When Mandela came on and Hussein had said they didn't have enough money to feed the kids, and Pete Cohen made a bit of a risk. And he is a bit risky, which is great because dynamic risk assessment is an imperative and it's part of this Mandela cycle. So I'm going to come back to Pete Cohen. He took a risk, and the risk was that Mandela was, well, not telling the truth. That maybe that money might not go to the kids. Maybe that wasn't for food. Maybe that was just, a heist. Maybe. But it was checked out and the money was going to somewhere in Leeds, which was even more dodgy, wasn't it? This money that's going to Uganda was going via Leeds. Yeah, whatever. But the pictures came. The money went to Leeds. We raised some money. People put some money into this thing and it got sent to Leeds, and Hussein helped, and it was all on trust. And the next day there were photos. There was photos, there was videos, those kids getting the food of him going out to the shop and getting the food for the kids. Now, I'm not suggesting for a second that at that time Mandela couldn't eat, because of course he could, right? That's what I believe. We'll have to ask him. But he knew that there was a bigger picture at play. He had a vision that said that if people knew that this was the case and he had 101 orphans, he could create something great. And his dad had given him a name that said, you can be like them. You can be like the example of your name. You can be somebody who looks at your own people and decides what can happen for your people as a result of your hand and your hand in it, your influence, your time, the time you take, the time that Mandela took to feed those children, to be their voice, to be a voice for the voiceless. He took time. And when he took time, we took time. And when we took time and he took time, we did it together. We created over £10,000 and bought a farm. And it wasn't just the efforts of one person. It was the different efforts of different people. It was different kinds of efforts. It was some people were great starters, some great people were great finishers, some people were just solidly there all the way through the 24 hours, Matt Rowden. Like, we literally showed up for each other. We took time. We recognized that actually this is not a straight line. We knew we weren't just going to get a farm and then that'd be that. We got a farm, everybody's fine, the kids are great, there's bed there. Nah, it's a cyclical happening. It's going round and round because During all of those times when we were buying the farm, when we were in the room, when Pete Cohen broke his Achilles heel tendon, snapped it in the middle, was in agonizing pain. People felt sick during the night. There was somebody did 4 ultra marathons or something, 4 marathons in the night. I mean, people were in difficult circumstances, and some people had to skip a bit and go to bed. Some people had to get out of bed and run all night to feel that they were contributing. Other people like me were like, no, I'm not going to bed. I will stay until the end. Particular aspects of particular bits were difficult for particular people. And that's also what the Mandala model recognizes. And that in those moments, we acknowledged our needs, our health needs, our disability needs, our transport needs. Was there somebody running through the street? Yes, she needed, I think, a drink at some point, and she had to go and get it from an open cafe, and this was all reported during the night. A very exciting night that also recognized our needs. Pete's Achilles heel was causing him agony. He needed to go to bed. I said, go to bed. We're not going anywhere. We acknowledged our needs. We learnt about each other. We cared about each other, and we took responsibility for what we decided to do. And again, that's number 4 of how the Mandala cycle is seen as different. Onto differences. We recognize those differences that we had. Pete has a Jewish background. Today we've been talking about the fact that he's just been to a concentration camp. Really important in his heritage that he recognizes that a lot of his ancestors were killed at the hand of other people because of their difference. He's acclimatizing and processing and moving through the generational trauma of those happenings because they affect us. The Mandala model recognizes, the cycle recognizes our religion, our gender, our ethnicity, our race, our disability. Those differences affect our sexuality, our faith, our class, all of those things, our culture, affect how we practice, how we live in the world, how we do social work. It needs to be celebrated, respected, embraced. We need to practice acceptance. We all have needs. Not just some of us. They need to be given due consideration. And when we make time for people, people feel valued. And during this non-linear process, we can negotiate what happens next. Pete, go to bed. We're going to sort this. Yes. Excellent, Matt. Thanks for being here. Can't do without you. Don't go away. Brilliant, Laura. Keep running. Go and get that drink. We also need to recognize in those times our experiences, not just our educational experiences, our literal school experiences, but our learning experiences. Laura's strength was to get out of bed and run 4 marathons. If I'd done that, I'd have died. Number 1, I can't run. Number 2, I could never do 4 marathons to this body. I've only done 1, which I did last year for the Disabled Entrepreneurs Club. And if you want to donate, please do. We're nearly at the 10,000 mark. I rode a hand cycle, but it took me 2 years to do the practice, the experience, the learning, to understand how to push my body to that extreme. We had to recognize in that 24 hours for that farm what our educational experiences brought to the table. Whether that's speaking experience, Pete Cohen can deliver anything anywhere. He could jump onto a live anywhere and be a smooth operator. My private school and state school experiences have definitely impacted me, and all of my life experiences as well, because they happen in life. And number 7 is that the Mandala model recognizes life experiences. Dear Lord, that we don't recognize life experiences in practice education, in practice, in social work, in life, that we don't recognize life experiences. We need a model to explain that we have to understand that people experience loss and grief and separation and poverty and wealth and migration and homelessness and births and luck and employment, and those affect us. I'm glad there's a model that we can teach to social workers who teach social workers, that we need to recognize our life experiences in our practice. Because I don't know about you, but the fact that I've got 3 kids I made, 2 that I borrowed, that I'm in a wheelchair, that I've been divorced twice, that I've been almost bankrupt once, that I have moved from one country to another, that I have been homeless, that I moved 19 times when I moved to Scarborough the first time because I come from a gypsy background, that 2 of my births have been traumatic. My own birth was traumatic, that I've had extraordinary luck and continue to have exponential luck that cannot be explained by anything other than alchemy, and that I have always been employed when I've chosen to be or been able to be, in spite of being multiply disabled, and that my dad went under a bus when I was 17 and I had to turn his life support machine off, and I've died 3 times. All impacts on how I carry out social work. And I'm sure you're thinking right now about the things that impact your interaction in the world. But also, fantabulously, I am party to being able to develop the global definition of social work for the globe, for older people. This has been something I have now been charged with, to help 2 other humans share with a group of humans, a working party, who will share with BASWA, who will then share with the International Federation of Social Work, who will share with the 4 nations, and we will together grow an understanding and a definition of what social work with older people is going to look like and sound like, because it's got to change. We're going to have 19 million, no, it might be 17 million, but many million, I think it's 19, by 2050 octogenarians. I'm going to be one of them. So I'm literally writing the definition for myself. I'm including myself in the definition of social work as I become an octogenarian, because if I've written it, I'm not going to be able to complain about it, am I? I'm not doing it on my own, I'm doing it with the whole world, but I'm very grateful that I have some input into the definition of what social work is going to look like for me and you, because you're all old too. But our age, number 8, how our childhood, and believe me, my childhood has impacted on my adulthood. Believe me, I was an adult before I was a child. It's true. How we were as a youth, and there are different stories for different days, which I will be going into. Lifespan planning, I will be going through each of the lifespans, beginning with the 0 to 7, and actually pre-birth very shortly. It's something I've been studying in the last 2 years, and I've been writing a program around the lifespan decades. Our adolescence, how we were as young people, and then how we are and who we're with as older people. Number 8 impacts the way that I practice. And of course, all of those things, the significance of age, for example, impact on people like Mandala and the farm. There were very young people. There was a young person who didn't have a wheelchair, tiny little girl, ended up with an adult wheelchair. There were older people that didn't live in the farm, on the farm, but for whom the farm individuals took food to the elders of their community to make sure that they had food. Our age impacts on how we practice. It impacts on our social work. as does legislation, and as does its application to practice. Because when I think about my practice in social work now, I am legally obliged to notice and comply with the Human Rights Act, the Equality Act, and Dignity at Work policies. But more than those, the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, Wales Act, the Vordas V, which is the violence and sexual violence against women in Wales, all impact on how I apply legislation into practice. I got an award last weekend from Sarah Ferguson and Dr. Tererai Trent. Inclusion, the charity that you were all part of for the disabled entrepreneurs, and James Lawrence nominated us for an award, and we got bronze this year in the not-profit Women Change the World Award. And Dr. Tererai Trent was the lady that heads that. She opened a school with excuse me, rubbing my eyes, I think I've got a bit of hay fever, with Oprah Winfrey, and Oprah then funded her £1.5 million, and then she went on to build 19 schools, I believe. I'm sure it's more now. An amazing woman who I spent the weekend, getting cuddles from and talking to, and actually I spoke more to her at the table than I did Sarah. I just find her a fascinating lady. She took her understanding of what her dreams were. Remember, this is what we need to take time. A lady went to her and took time in the village and said, what are your dreams? And asked her what her dreams were when she was a child. She couldn't read. She looked at the page and she said, I want to be able to understand those words. And what my dream is to have a degree, a master's, a PhD, to be a doctor, to help my people. And she said, those dreams can be a reality. And she went home and said to her mum, I've got dreams. And she said, then bury them and let them grow. I say bury them in your heart, because they never leave you, right? They never leave you. You know what you're meant to do. Those things just keep repeating, educating, facilitating, delivering. Always, I always knew that I would be talking, speaking, storytelling, that I was actually just, anciently a storyteller around a campfire that spoke about the truth of things. I know who I am. I know what I am. But Tererai Trent knew what she was, which is a lifter of the people around her, to see where there was a way through, to understand the way through and up and out of this horror. There's always those that lead people. There are leaders and there are followers, and there are some of us that lead people out. I think that's a different kind of leadership, leading people out. And this is what Tererai Trent and I have in common, that we have a desire to lead people out. And the Mandala cycle is for practice educators, for social workers, and people that do social work are charged with leading people out, to be anti-oppressive, to be inclusive, to believe that everybody has a chance, an opportunity to fulfill their dreams. And maybe the Mandala model might have given you some ideas about how this kind of understanding might begin to influence how I work with others and they work with me. Maybe you focused on differences as opposed to notice the similarities you have to people. Maybe your discussions about the lived experience are what I like to call the living experience, because it isn't my lived experience, right? I am still disabled every day. I don't get to put it down at the end of the day and go home. It's not like work. How our living experiences are really similar, actually. Surprisingly similar. Wherever we come from, whatever socioeconomic background or part of the world. And even that maybe gender differences have helped for you in the last few years unearth different challenges and the role of gender in society and how that plays out, and maybe how unequalness plays out and why. And potentially the idea of unconscious bias. Something I had at the beginning of this course was unconscious bias towards wealth. I had an unconscious bias towards the oppression and the discrimination of people with wealth because I didn't understand them. My unconscious bias led to ways of thinking about people with wealth in a way that was not respectful, not honourable, and didn't see their totality. It saw just a very tiny slither of them, and I forgot their humanity. And I think the same can happen the other way around when we're thinking about all of our kinds of unconscious bias. So today, the Mandala effect for me is thinking about the whole of that cycle. And this is a beautiful picture for me. The whole of that cycle, the time we take, how we acknowledge our needs and who we are, the differences we hold, our experiences in education, our life experiences and how life has happened, and then how old we are. It would be ridiculous, wouldn't it, for them to treat me like I was 19 on this course when I'm already a teacher, I'm already psychotherapeutically trained, and I've already worked with disabled people for many years. If those things weren't taken into account, it would be really rather, well, foolhardy, I think. And also very disappointing for the course because they wouldn't be able to take advantage of my living experience. So the Mandala model for me has been powerful in understanding how I want to move forward in helping other social workers become social workers and be social workers, and help myself as a trainee social worker be a social worker in the most inclusive way. And the Mandala model for me began 3 years ago, before I'd even heard about it. Began 2 years ago as we watched our children, because all of us are connected, right? There's no difference between us. We're not separate. Watched our children get beds and learn to sleep in beds, and then go to school, and then harvest the nuts, and then go to the next 365 days trip around the sun, as the cows were bought and they had babies, and those children. Oh no! I've just died. I've just died on social media, and those children were able to see the fruits of their labour. So I hope it goes on great on social media in Clubhouse, but I'm going to have to call it quits because I have made a boo-boo, and my phone has died. But we have been today on everywhere: Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitch, on Twitter, on X, on Instagram. So everybody's going to be able to look back on this again. I've been Mandy Jane, and we have a disabled Ultrapreneurs Club. It's not something that I have promoted on here this morning, but there we are. I began the Disabled Entrepreneurs Club 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, no, it's a year ago. 2 years ago, I raised money for a hand cycle. I raised money for a hand cycle because I use a wheelchair and I wanted to get strong again. I'd been in hospital, I'd been very ill. I wanted to take my health into my own hands, and I did. I trained for a year. I raised money for a hand cycle. I paid half of it myself. I raised money for half of it, and then I went and did a hand cycle marathon in Cardiff City House of Sports last August. At that point, we opened the Disabled Entrepreneurs Club. The reason for that is because the welfare, the government require a disabled person to be making the minimum income guarantee in the first 12 months. That minimum income guarantee is 7 grand-ish, just under. If they don't make it in the first 12 months, because that's all Access to Work will give an award for, without any evidence of turning over the minimum income guarantee, then that individual is stopped from that Access to Work claim, and until they can prove that they are going to make the minimum income guarantee, their Access to Work is denied. So that can often mean that it's denied before it's even begun, because Access to Work is so behind that whilst just after COVID they were 20 months behind, we are not far really from them reaching those heady heights. Probably by Christmas, I would say that we might be back there if they don't make a change now. So even our reconsiderations and our independent commissioners' examination of the files are taking many, many months and weeks. So my apologies to the hundreds and thousands of people that affects. Certainly, if I was the commissioner for Access to Work or the person that ran it, I would be on the BBC apologising right now. That's what I would do. So I understand the pressure they're under, but also that rolls downhill, right? So that means that at the moment in Access to Work, we are many, many, many months behind. And the reason we need the Disabled Entrepreneurs Club is because the first disabled entrepreneur, the first entrepreneur will be awarded £10,000. That's the minimum income guarantee, whatever that is at the time it's awarded, which is just shy of £7,000. And the rest of it will go to contribute to their coaching between now, when they get the award, and hopefully the 12 weeks when Access to Work are meant to respond. So those 3 months, 3 months of coaching, and it's just, fantastic value, nothing, and that minimum income guarantee amount into their UK bank account. And I say UK bank account because at the moment we run services for Access to Work in the United Kingdom. It will one day be worldwide. It won't be long now before we are branching out across Europe and later over to Mandala, but in the farm. But until we reach there, at the moment, it's into a UK bank account for a UK entrepreneur that is able to apply to and with Access to Work. So they're the criteria. We're going to be opening up that application process soon. And anyone with an active or existing application in with Accessibility Partners will be able to apply for that. So I hope that you are already on that road. I hope you already have an application in. If you are interested in workfulness and you want to come along, then that is where you need to be coming. Let me just give you that. That's where you want to be. Oh, hang on a minute. Let me see if I can do it. Let's see. Can I do this? There we are. There we are. So for Access to Work, please come along and put in an inquiry at www.a number 2w.me. Remember, it's .me at the end. And then how this all began is, of course, the group Inclusion, which began on Clubhouse, and we got together quite a few people who decided that the Access to Work programme was taking too long to come. I'd got a job and I was still waiting for them to come and help me, and it was nearly 20 months later, and I had clients that were coming along. I'd already started the business and we just couldn't get their funding sorted, so I was working for nothing for 20 months for lots of people who wouldn't have had any sort of service without my attention to their application, and they wouldn't have had coping strategy support because it wasn't there until Access to Work had processed it. So I had to work for 20 months, and this group, the Inclusion Group, got together and wrote to the government. They wrote to the government and they said to the office, to the Deputy Prime Minister, please can we not make work inaccessible, but can we make it Access to Work, not in Access to Work? And there were over 300 signatures went to the Minister for Disabled People in the office of the Deputy Prime Minister, and it was Robert. No, it wasn't Robert. It was one of the MPs with polio who has sadly stepped down now. But he pushed that forward. Now the government were already planning on ploughing lots of money into Access to Work and lots of money into workfulness. But it isn't just about putting money into it. It's also about having a connected attitude. The Mandala Effect. The idea that the cycle is that we have to include all of those things. So when we're thinking about a disabled entrepreneur making £7,000 in the first year, and yet in our business services we don't expect normal people without disabilities to make £7,000 turnover in the first annual turnover of business. In fact, often they'll make a loss. I wonder how likely it is that we are setting up disabled people to fail, and how the attitudes of the Mandala Effect that we've been talking about this morning are really important. And that maybe if we can remember those things when we have our interactions with people, that we are all affected by our differences, by our educational opportunities, by our habitus, where we are situated, by our age, our location, our situatedness, what our life experiences are, and acknowledge that we all have needs and that we have to meet those needs, and that we need to do that in a fair and equitable way together. Then I think that maybe inclusion is going to be the foregone conclusion and the only global pandemic that you and I wish to be part of, and is where we're going. We're already in it. The global pandemic was already with us. I'm afraid that COVID was just an addendum. The global pandemic is disconnection, and its solution is belonging. And we are in belonging in business. We're talking about including me and including you, about making this gig about us and not just about me or about them or about her or about him. It's about us. You'll notice that right in the middle of inclusion is us. There is no separation between us. We are all one. And everybody's concern needs to be everybody's concern. To do that, we need to have an open and willing heart to share and be together with no expectations except understanding and appreciation that when we talk, when we communicate, when we're honestly open, when we don't have those barriers to knowledge, when the drawbridge has been brought down and we can walk across that knowledge bridge to understanding, then we're home and dry. If you don't know about workfulness in the UK and you're disabled, please have a look down there. If you would like to join and be an ally with inclusion, I would like you to go to inclusion.me. I would like you to go to the Disabled Entrepreneurs Club. I would like you to donate. I would like to get that donation up to £10,000 so we can donate it to the first entrepreneur in the UK and show the UK government how we help people into and through to and in workfulness, because that's the answer. We haven't got enough money and we need to make some revenue, and the only way to do that is for us to go and do some work, but we need to do it in a workful and effective and equitable way, and we need to do it together, and we need to do it, I think, with an attitude of being able to bring it all together for everybody, for us, and not just the select few. Listen, we're a little bit early this morning. I'm going to go and take a 5-minute break before I begin at 9 o'clock. I've been Mandy Jane. I'm a trainee social worker in the UK. I'm also a Sendico. I like thinking about how people think and live and work, because I had a bit of a struggly background. I've not had an easy one. I have what you call adverse childhood experiences. Listen, if that's been new, everybody has. Everybody. People are kind of, look at me, well, we all have. So maybe the answer is that we all share together learning things like this. And I don't keep information behind doors because I don't think it should be anything but free. So if you want to know what I want to know, I am here on a Saturday for an hour. On a Monday morning in the same place, MJ's house. We've just been on Clubhouse, and it's also often then on social media like this, and then and that's in MJ's house again. If you're looking for it, it's Clubhouse. It's an audio media app. Have a look for it. There's a lot of people left it, but I'm still there, I'm afraid. I just keep on keeping on, and on Monday mornings in MJ House, and then Monday night I'm in inclusion. We're in inclusion. The gang's in inclusion, and then we come out of Clubhouse on Monday night and we share ourselves in Zoom and StreamYard and all over the place. Sometimes with other groups, we often will go and gate crash another group we're invited, and we join together. So we do some mashups, and I really enjoy the mashups. I really do. So if you want some fun and come on social media mashups with us, and that's people mashups, not media mashups, that's people mashups. If you want to come to media mashups, people media mashups, that's what we do on a Monday night. Not every Monday night, we only do them now and again. We don't want too much excitement. We're disabled people. Oh, I'm joking. If you want to come and meet other disabled people, and they're not just disabled, we have some allies as well, some normal ones. We don't exclude to include. On an inclusion on Monday night, we're there from 7 o'clock. Come over to Clubhouse and you'll get the secret link. If you don't come to Clubhouse, it's difficult to get the link, but if you message me on the back channel, I'll even send it out to you. But shh, don't tell anyone. It's a secret. Okay, so we've been talking about the Mandala Effect. I helped a boy called Mandala, and another one called Peter, and another one called Hussein, and some other ones that I can't name because there's too many of us, help them buy a farm for 101 orphans, and he was called Mandala. Social worker, and this cycle, this model of inclusive practice just sits with my values, my vision, and my dreams. And you that are listening, you sit in my heart, and our inclusion is my becoming. And we are part of just the best global pandemic. Never no more. Never thought I'd hear myself saying that, but this is the only global pandemic to be part of. I am so grateful for you. I am so grateful for Saturdays, and I'm so grateful for 5 minutes break. I'm going to say goodbye. Have an incredible day. Lots and lots of love to everybody that's been here.